Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of my lecture. On today's episode, we would be talking about admissions made by a counsel which is binding on the client. In my previous class, I discussed admission made by agents and whether or not they are binding, and I told you yes, that they are. In today's class, we will be talking about admissions made by a counsel and whether or not they are binding on clients. Now, the answer is yes, they are. And our authority for that is the case of OKESIJI versus LAWAL. Also, in the case of OKONKWO versus KPAJIE, Justice of the Supreme Court said that a counsel who is representing his client in a civil case or matter in litigation has got every wide powers of making admissions on his client's behalf. He is the agent and the mouthpiece of his client in litigation. So he has authority to make admissions on his behalf during proceedings. So do you see that? So when you are talking about a lawyer can make admissions on behalf of his client. According to Nemeka Agu, he has wide powers to make admissions. But if we are juxtaposing this with a criminal case, you would see that based on the authority of one of the cases that I cited, where a lawyer makes an admission, that admission cannot be treated as a confession. So, in as much as Nemeka Agu has told us that a lawyer has the wide power to make admissions, whatever admissions the lawyer has made cannot be treated as a confession as against the client. The reason I'm pointing this out is because as a lawyer, you are also the agent of your client. Now, what we discussed in our last class was basically the agent, whether or not what the agents say can be binding on the principal. And then we said yes, when he's acting in his job description, it can be binding on his client. Now, in this case, can we say when a lawyer has said something for his client which is criminal in nature, can a criminal case be brought up against the client? The answer is no. And our authority would be R versus Asuko Etim Iyang, where the counsel in this case testified in a civil matter about a particular London magistrate court and the fact that his client was married in London. And then in a Calabar matter, he testified that in the Calabar matter. And then that would be having two wives, which was a crime at that time in Calabar. That is bigamy. So then they decided to bring a criminal case against him, and then they wanted to admit that particular admission, and then they wanted to treat the admission as a confession. No, according to our authority in Awoke versus Owoduni, yes, you can bring a particular case from one particular court and present it in this particular court, but where that particular admission is made by the counsel and not made by the person, it cannot be treated as a confession but only an admission. It now begs the question, when that particular thing was stated by the client in that case A, can then a criminal proceeding be brought? Yes. So let us say that in the first case, so in early January 2021, a civil suit was brought. Now, the lawyer was trying to prove something. Then he told his client to go to the stand. Then his client was explaining. As the client was talking, that's how the client now said something that he wasn't supposed to say. He said that, oh, he killed the person or something like that. Now, because he has already said that there was nothing that the lawyer could do, the guy lost the case, and then a criminal matter was brought based on his testimony in the civil matter. Do you understand? The criminal matter was brought based on the testimony in the civil matter, and then the question then is, can that testimony be treated as an admission or a confession? Then we now have to look at the element of a valid confession. If it agrees with all the elements of a valid confession, then yes, the testimony would have to be treated as a confession. Do you understand? But if that admission was made by the counsel in the case, then it cannot be treated as a confession. That's the case of R versus Asuko. Do you understand that? So yes, in as much as Nemeka Agu was right in telling us that a lawyer has wide powers to make admissions. The wide powers are only restricted to admissions but cannot be confessions. That is what I'm trying to let you understand. And the two authorities for that would be OKESIJI versus LAWAL and OKONKWO versus KPAJIE. In my next class, we'll be talking about admissions made in representative capacity and whether or not they should be valid admissions. I will see you in my next class.